Since you enjoyed that so much, I dare you to spend the rest of the night with me.
Sienna Blake stood in front of the mirror, tugging at the emerald dress Chloe had practically forced her into. The fabric clung to her curves in ways that made her want to wrap herself in a blanket and hide. At 26, Sienna had built a modest reputation as an event planner in Chicago, organizing corporate parties and wedding receptions with the kind of enthusiasm that made clients feel special. But tonight, she felt anything but special. "You look stunning," Chloe announced, appearing behind her with that mischievous grin that usually preceded disaster. "Tonight is about letting loose. No planners, no schedules, just pure fun." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "The last time you said that, I ended up singing karaoke to a crowd of strangers while wearing a cowboy hat. And it was legendary," Chloe shot back, grabbing her hand. "Come on, Velvet Lounge is waiting." Into the heart of chaos, the club pulsed with energy that seemed to vibrate through the floor and into Sienna's bones. Red and amber lights swept across faces lost in music, conversation, and the freedom that nighttime offered. She navigated through the crowd carefully, her heels clicking against the polished floor as she clutched, her small purse like a lifeline. Sienna possessed something rare. An emotional intelligence so finely tuned, she could sense tension in a room before anyone spoke. She could read body language like others read books, catching the subtle shifts in mood that most people missed. Yet somehow, she always managed to stumble into the most awkward situations imaginable. "Stay here," Chloe shouted over the music. "I'll grab us drinks." Sienna nodded, finding a spot near a tall column where she could observe without being swallowed by the crowd. She watched couples dancing, groups laughing, strangers becoming friends for a single night. There was something beautiful about it, this temporary escape from reality. The first encounter, that's when she felt it. A hand, uninvited and unwelcome, sliding around her waist with the confidence of someone who had never been told no. Sienna's body went rigid. She turned to find a man with bloodshot eyes and a smile that made her skin crawl. His breath reeked of whiskey and poor decisions. "Hey, beautiful," he slurred, leaning closer. "Want to dance?" Sienna stepped back, her voice firm despite the nervousness bubbling in her chest. "Remove your hand, or I promise you'll regret it." The man blinked slowly, his alcohol-soaked brain struggling to process the threat. But something in Sienna's eyes, a fire that burned brighter than fear, made him stumble backward into the crowd. Sienna exhaled, her heart racing. She turned to compose herself, rolling her shoulders back as if shaking off the encounter. But then, barely a minute later, another hand touched her waist. This time, there was no hesitation, no second guessing. Sienna spun around, and her palm connected with a face and a slap that echoed through the immediate area like a gunshot. Several people nearby turned to look. Her hands stung from the impact, and for a split second, she felt victorious. Then she saw him. The man who changed everything. He was tall, impossibly tall, with dark hair that fell just slightly over his forehead in a way that seemed both intentional and effortless. His suit was midnight blue, tailored so perfectly it looked like it had been sewn directly onto his body. But it was his eyes that stopped her cold. Deep brown, almost amber in the shifting club lights, with an intensity that made her feel like she was being seen for the first time in her life, and on his left cheek, glowing red against his olive skin, was her handprint. "Oh, no," Sienna breathed, her eyes widening. "Oh, no, no, no. I thought you were the other guy, the drunk one. I didn't mean to slap you. I thought you were touching me without permission, but you weren't, were you? You were just standing there, and I turned around, and my hand just flew. And now your face is red, and I've assaulted a complete stranger." The man didn't move. He simply raised one hand to his cheek, touching the spot where she'd struck him with an expression that was impossible to read. Then, slowly, the corner of his mouth lifted into something that might have been a smile. "Do it again," he said, his voice low and smooth like expensive bourbon. Sienna took a step back, her brain short-circuiting. "What?" "I dare you," he continued, his eyes never leaving hers. "Hit me again. The spark of something dangerous. Are you insane?" Sienna sputtered, her cheeks flushing. "I just assaulted you, and you're asking me to do it again?" What kind of person asks for that? He tilted his head slightly, studying her with the kind of focus usually reserved for complex puzzles. The kind who finds you interesting. Before Sienna could respond, the bartender appeared beside them, a woman with silver hair and knowing eyes. She placed 2 glasses on the bar, one with clear liquid, the other amber. "I didn't order anything," Sienna said quickly. "I know," the man replied. "I did. I don't accept drinks from strangers. Good instinct." "I'm serious. So am I. I mean it. I believe you." He picked up his glass, took a sip, and set it down. "Your drink will sit here untouched unless you want it. I'm not trying to trick you. I'm trying to talk to you." Sienna crossed her arms. "Why would you want to talk to someone who just slapped you?" "Because in the 3 years I've lived in this city, you're the first person who's treated me like a human being instead of a bank account." The words hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Sienna felt her defenses wavering, her curiosity overtaking her caution. "What's your name?" she asked softly. His eyes gleamed. "Tell me yours first." "Not happening." "Then we have a problem," he said. But he was smiling now, a real smile that transformed his entire face. "Because I can't stop thinking about you, and I don't even know what to call you." Sienna's phone buzzed in her purse. A text from Chloe. "Who is that man? Run if you need to. Stay if you dare." She looked at the stranger, at his red cheek and warm eyes. At the way he stood there waiting for her decision without pushing or demanding. Every logical part of her brain screamed to walk away. But her heart, that traitorous, curious heart, whispered something different. "Sienna," she finally said. "My name is Sienna Blake." He extended his hand, and when she took it, she felt a current of electricity that had nothing to do with static. "Theo Harrington. And I think you just changed my entire night." The business card that held a future 20 minutes later. Theo was called away by someone in a dark suit who whispered urgently in his ear. Before leaving, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, pure white embossed with only his name and a phone number. No title, no company, nothing else. "Call me," he said simply, "when you're ready." Sienna held the card after he left, her fingers trembling slightly. Chloe appeared at her elbow, eyes wide with questions. "Do you know who that was?" Chloe whispered. "Double quotes, Theo Harrington," Sienna replied. "Theo Harrington," Chloe repeated slowly. "As in Harrington Technologies. As in the 32-year-old billionaire who just revolutionized cloud computing. As in the man worth more than some small countries." Sienna looked at the card, then at Chloe, then at the card again. Her legs felt weak. "I slapped a billionaire." "You slapped a billionaire," Chloe confirmed. And he smiled. That night, Sienna lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the business card on her nightstand glowing in the moonlight. Her cat, Pepper, a gray tabby with attitude, purred beside her. "What have I done, Pepper?" she whispered. Pepper blinked slowly, offering no answers. But somewhere across the city, in a penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan, Theo Harrington stood by his window, holding his own phone. Staring at the contact information his security team had discreetly gathered, he touched his cheek where her hand had connected. And for the first time in years, he felt something other than the emptiness that wealth had carved into his soul. He felt alive. Sienna woke up the next morning with Pepper sitting directly on her chest, staring at her with those judgmental green eyes that only cats possessed. Sunlight streamed through the curtains of her small apartment, illuminating the business card that still sat on her nightstand like a tiny white flag of surrender. She grabbed her phone and immediately texted Chloe. "I'm not calling him." 3 dots appeared. Then, "Yes, you are." "I know I'm not." Billionaires don't date event planners who slap them in clubs. Billionaires who get slapped and smile definitely do. Sienna groaned, pulling the blanket over her head. Pepper meowed in protest and jumped off the bed with an indignant thump. For the next 6 hours, Sienna tried to focus on work. She had a corporate gala to plan for a pharmaceutical company, complete with ice sculptures and a 7-course meal. She answered emails, confirmed vendors, and updated spreadsheets. But every few minutes, her eyes drifted to her purse where the card sat tucked in the side pocket by noon. She had created a list of reasons not to call. By 2 in the afternoon, she had created a list of reasons why she should. By 4, she had given up on lists entirely and was lying on her living room floor, questioning every decision she had ever made. "He's a billionaire," she told the ceiling. "Billionaires have assistants and publicists and people who screen their calls. He probably hands out business cards to everyone. This means nothing." Oh, shit. But then she remembered the way he had looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but directly at her. Like she was the only person in that entire crowded club. Like her slap had woken something inside him that had been sleeping for years. The call that changed everything at 7:30 that evening. Sienna picked up her phone. Her hands trembled as she typed in the number from the card. She stared at it for a full minute, her thumb hovering over the call button. "This is insane," she whispered. "Completely insane." She pressed call. It rang once. "Just once, Sienna." His voice came through clear and warm, like he had been waiting by the phone. Like he knew she would call eventually, her breath caught. "How did you know it was me?" "I've been waiting for this number to appear on my screen since I gave you that card." There was something in his tone, a vulnerability that didn't match the confident billionaire image. "I'm glad you called." Sienna sat down on her couch, suddenly grateful she wasn't standing. "I almost didn't." "No," Theo replied. "You debated for exactly 19 hours and 43 minutes, you counted?" "No," I estimated. "But I was close, wasn't I?" Despite herself, Sienna smiled. "Uncomfortably close." "Have dinner with me," Theo said. No preamble, no small talk. Just a direct request that hung in the air between them. "I don't know you," Sienna countered, even as her heart accelerated. "That's why I'm asking you to dinner, so we can know each other. People like you don't have dinner with people like me? People like me?" Theo's voice carried a note of curiosity. "What does that mean?" "You know what it means? You're a billionaire. I plan birthday parties and corporate events. We exist in completely different universes." There was a pause, and when Theo spoke again, his voice had softened. "Sienna, the woman I met last night, didn't care about my bank account. She cared that someone might have touched her without permission. She defended herself without hesitation. She was real in a world where everyone I meet is performing. That's not about universes. That's about character." Sienna felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she had built around her heart to protect herself from disappointment. "When tomorrow night?" 7 o'clock. I'll send a car. I can drive myself." "I'm sure you can, but I'd like to send a car anyway. It's not about your capability. It's about showing you that I take this seriously." Sienna closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and jumped. "Okay, tomorrow at 7. The restaurant where walls came down the next evening, Sienna stood in front of her closet, having what Chloe would later describe as a full existential crisis. She tried on 6 different dresses, hated them all, then settled on a simple navy blue dress that made her feel elegant, without trying too hard. She left her dark hair down in loose waves and kept her makeup natural. The car that arrived was sleek and black, driven by a quiet man who opened the door for her with a respectful nod. As they drove through Chicago's glittering downtown, Sienna tried to calm her racing thoughts. The restaurant was called Lumiere, a French place tucked away on a quiet street where celebrities and politicians went to avoid attention. The moment Sienna walked in, a hostess greeted her by name and led her through the main dining room to a private space in the back. Theo stood when she entered. He wore a charcoal gray suit with no tie, the top button of his white shirt undone. His hair was slightly less perfect than it had been at the club, like he had run his hands through it a few times. Somehow, that made him seem more human. "You came," he said, and there was genuine relief in his voice. "You sound surprised?" "I'm never surprised," Theo replied, pulling out her chair. "But I'm often hopeful." The conversation that peeled away masks, they ordered food, though later neither would remember what they ate. The conversation started carefully, 2 people circling each other like dancers learning new steps. But gradually, the careful words gave way to honesty. "Why did you really want to have dinner with me?" Sienna asked, setting down her wine glass. Theo leaned back, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "Because when you slapped me, you didn't apologize immediately. You didn't crumble or try to charm your way out of it. You stood there ready to defend your action if I turned out to be the person you thought I was." That kind of strength is rare. That's not strength, Sienna said softly. That's just survival. When you're a woman alone in a club, you learn to react first and think later. But you did think later. You called me. You're here. That takes a different kind of courage. Sienna studied him, really looked at him for the first time. Beyond the expensive suit and the handsome face, she saw something else. Loneliness. The kind that came from being surrounded by people who wanted something from you, but never saw you. Why are you lonely? She asked suddenly. Theo blinked, surprised. How did you know? I'm good at reading people. It's my job to make events feel personal, which means understanding what people need before they ask for it. And you need someone to see you. Not your money, not your company. Just you. The silence that followed was heavy with truth. Theo reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his skin. My father built Harrington Technologies from nothing, he said quietly. When he died 3 years ago, I inherited everything. The company, the wealth, the expectations. Everyone sees the empire. No one sees the person carrying it. Sienna turned her hand over, letting their fingers brush. That sounds exhausting. It is. Theo's voice was barely above a whisper. Until last night, I couldn't remember the last time someone looked at me and saw a man instead of a bank account. The moment hearts collided, tell me something real, Sienna said. Something you've never told anyone in one of these fancy dinners. Theo smiled, a sad, beautiful smile. I hate caviar. Everyone serves it at events because they think I expect it. I've eaten caviar at 100 dinners and hated it every single time. But I keep eating it because that's what's expected. Sienna laughed, a genuine sound that filled the private room. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. Your turn, Theo said. Tell me something real. Sienna looked down at their almost touching hands. I'm terrified right now. Terrified that this is some kind of dream, and I'll wake up tomorrow and realize it never happened. Terrified that it is real, and I'll find a way to ruin it because I always sabotage good things before they can hurt me. Why would you sabotage this? Because you're you, and I'm me. Because this doesn't make sense. Because fairy tales don't happen to girls who live in studio apartments with cats named Pepper. Theo finally closed the distance, taking her hand fully in his. His touch was warm and steady, grounding her racing thoughts. Sienna, I've spent my entire adult life in boardrooms making billion-dollar decisions. I've never been more certain of anything than I am of this moment right now. This isn't a fairy tale. It's just two people who found each other in the chaos. Sienna felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. I slapped you, best thing that's happened to me in years. You're impossible, and you're extraordinary. Theo squeezed her hand gently. I know this is fast. I know it doesn't follow any logical pattern. But I learned a long time ago that the most important things in life rarely do. Stay with me tonight. Not physically, he added quickly, seeing her expression. I mean, stay in this moment. Let's not worry about tomorrow, or what makes sense. Let's just be here. Sienna looked at their intertwined hands. The man who somehow saw through all her defenses to the scared, hopeful person underneath. She thought about running, about protecting herself, about all the logical reasons this could never work. Then she thought about the way her heart felt when he smiled at her. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. The promise of tomorrow? They talked for 3 more hours. About childhoods and dreams, about failures and fears, about the small moments that shaped who they became. Theo told her about learning to code in his father's office, about the pressure of living up to a legacy he never asked for. Sienna shared stories about disastrous weddings she had saved, about the joy of creating perfect moments for strangers. When the restaurant finally closed, they stood outside under the Chicago night sky. The city hummed around them, alive and indifferent to the two people whose lives were quietly transforming. I want to see you again, Theo said. Soon? Tomorrow? Sienna suggested, surprising herself with her boldness. Tomorrow, he agreed. And the day after that? And every day you'll let me. He didn't kiss her. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. A gesture so old-fashioned and sweet that Sienna felt her heart completely surrendered, as the car drove her home. Sienna pressed her hand to the window and watched the city lights blur past. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if this fragile, possible thing between them could survive the reality of their different worlds. But for the first time in her life, she was willing to find out. Back in his penthouse, Theo stood at the window holding his phone, a genuine smile on his face. His assistant knocked quietly on the door. "Sir, you have the board meeting at 8 tomorrow? Cancel it," Theo said without turning around. "Cancel it." "But sir, it's about the merger. Reschedule it. I have something more important to do." The assistant hesitated, then nodded and left. Theo looked at his reflection in the window, at the man who suddenly looked younger. Lighter, more alive. Sienna Blake had slapped him. And in doing so, she had woken him up to a life he had forgotten he wanted. Tomorrow couldn't come fast enough. Sienna woke to 17 missed calls from Chloe and a text message that simply read, "You better be alive or in love." She smiled, stretched, and realized that Pepper had somehow managed to sleep directly on her face for most of the night. The cat blinked at her with zero remorse. "He wants to see me again today," Sienna told Pepper, who responded by licking her own paw with complete indifference. "This is actually happening. A billionaire wants to see me again." Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number that made her heart jump. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "I didn't. I kept replaying our conversation and smiling like someone who has forgotten how the world works." "Breakfast at my place?" "I promise I won't serve caviar." Sienna read it 3 times, her chest warming with each word. This man, this impossibly wealthy, devastatingly handsome man, was nervous. She could feel it in the way he typed, in the vulnerability hiding beneath the casual words. She typed back, "I slept with a cat on my face, so not great. Breakfast sounds perfect, but I'm cooking. Send me your address." Response came immediately. "Deal. Though I should warn you, my kitchen is probably bigger than your apartment. Don't let it intimidate you. Nothing about you intimidates me." "I already slapped you, remember?" "How could I forget?" My cheek still tingles. The penthouse where dreams lived 2 hours later. Sienna stood in front of a building that seemed to pierce the clouds themselves. The doorman greeted her by name, which should have been comforting, but instead made her realize how thoroughly Theo had prepared for her arrival. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like ascending into another dimension. When the doors opened directly into his penthouse, Sienna forgot how to breathe. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Chicago in all its morning glory, the lake stretching endlessly beyond. The space was decorated in warm grays and deep blues, modern, but somehow inviting. Artwork that probably cost more than her yearly salary hung on walls. A grand piano sat in one corner, sheet music scattered across its surface like someone actually played it. Theo appeared from what she assumed was the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple black sweater. His hair was slightly damp, like he had just showered. He looked younger this way, more approachable, though no less breathtaking. "You came," he said, that same relief in his voice as the night before. "Did you think I wouldn't?" "I hoped you would." "Hope and certainty are different things," he gestured to the kitchen. "I bought ingredients but have no idea what to do with them. I usually have a chef, but I sent everyone away today. I wanted it to be just us." Sienna walked into the kitchen and stopped. He hadn't been exaggerating. The space was enormous. All marble countertops and professional-grade appliances that probably required instruction manuals. But scattered across the counter were eggs, vegetables, cheese, bread, and fresh herbs. "You went shopping?" she asked softly. "I sent someone shopping," Theo admitted, "but I personally selected the recipes I thought you might like to make." "Is that cheating?" "It's sweet." Sienna rolled up her sleeves. "Okay, billionaire. Time to learn how normal people make breakfast." The dance of getting closer they cooked together, and it was messy and perfect. Theo proved to be absolutely hopeless in the kitchen, cracking eggs with too much force and setting off the smoke alarm while attempting to toast bread. Sienna laughed so hard she had to lean against the counter, tears streaming down her face. "I run a multi-billion-dollar company," Theo said, staring at the ruined toast with genuine confusion. "How is bread defeating me?" Because money can't buy common sense, Sienna teased, gently pushing him aside. Watch and learn. As she cooked, Theo stood close, asking questions about technique and timing. But mostly he just watched her, his eyes tracking her movements with a focus that made her skin tingle. There was something intimate about this, about being in his space, teaching him something simple and human. Why did you really want me here? Sienna asked as she plated the omelets. You could have taken me to any restaurant in the city. Theo was quiet for a moment, leaning against the counter. Because restaurants are performances. We dress up, we order expensive food, we play roles. But here in my home, making breakfast together, this is real. I wanted you to see where I actually live, not where I entertain clients. They ate at his dining table, which could have seated 12 but felt cozy with just the two of them. Sunlight poured through the windows, turning everything golden. Sienna told him about her worst event planning disaster. A wedding where the groom's ex-girlfriend had shown up in a wedding dress. Theo laughed, really laughed, the sound filling the space with warmth. My turn, he said. Ask me anything, anything. Sienna set down her fork. What scares you? The truth that changed everything? Theo's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing his features. Becoming my father. He built an empire, but he died alone in his office at 2 in the morning, surrounded by contracts instead of people who loved him. I'm 32 and I'm following the exact same path. Work, more work, expensive dinners that mean nothing. Women who want the company more than the man. Until you, I'm not special. Sienna whispered. You're the first person in 3 years who has made me feel like a human being instead of a business opportunity. Theo reached across the table, taking her hand. Do you know what I did after you left last night? I stood at that window for 2 hours, just thinking about how empty my life has become, about how I can't remember the last time I laughed like I did at dinner, about how one slap from a beautiful stranger woke me up from a nightmare I didn't know I was living. Sienna felt tears building behind her eyes. Theo, I'm scared. This is happening so fast, and I don't know how to navigate your world. I don't know how to be the person someone like you needs. I don't need you to navigate my world, Theo said urgently, moving his chair closer to hers. I need you to show me yours. I need you to teach me how to live again, how to find joy in simple things like burnt toast and conversation. I need you to keep being exactly who you are, and who am I? You're the woman who slapped a stranger for crossing a line. The woman who called me, even though everything logical said not to. The woman who just spent the morning teaching a billionaire how to crack eggs. You're brave and real and funny and kind. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for. Sienna stood up and Theo followed, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, close enough to feel his breath catch. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I. I've never done anything like this before. Neither have I. What if we ruin it? What if we don't? Theo cupped her face gently with both hands. Sienna, I know this is crazy. I know it's too fast and doesn't make logical sense, but I've spent my entire life making careful, calculated decisions. Not one of them has made me feel the way I feel when I look at you. The kiss that sealed their fate. Sienna rose on her toes, closing the final distance between them. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. But then Theo's arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her closer, and Sienna's hands moved to his hair, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Theo rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me today, he whispered. Let me show you my world, and you show me yours. Let's build something together, even if we don't know what it looks like yet. Sienna nodded, unable to form words past the emotion clogging her throat. They spent the day exploring each other's lives. Theo showed her his office, where he admitted he spent most of his time avoiding actual human connection. Sienna took him to her favorite coffee shop, a tiny place in her neighborhood where the barista knew her order by heart. They walked through Millennium Park, holding hands like teenagers, talking about everything and nothing. As evening approached, they returned to his penthouse. Theo made hot chocolate, only setting off the smoke alarm once, which Sienna considered progress. They sat on his couch, watching the sun set over the city, her head resting on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. "I have a board meeting on Monday," Theo said quietly. "They're going to ask questions about why I canceled yesterday's meeting. They're going to question my priorities." "What will you tell them?" "The truth. That I found something more important than a merger." He turned to look at her, his eyes serious. "Sienna, I know we just met. I know this is insane. But I need you to know that I'm all in. Whatever this is, wherever it goes, I'm choosing you. Every day, I'm choosing you." Sienna sat up, turning to face him fully. "My world is small compared to yours. I live in a studio apartment. I drive a car that makes weird noises. My biggest client is a pharmaceutical company that pays me enough to cover rent and groceries. I can't compete with the life you're used to." "I don't want you to compete," Theo said fiercely. "I want you to exist exactly as you are. Your small apartment sounds better than this penthouse because you're in it. Your car that makes weird noises sounds like an adventure. Your life, Sienna, is the one I want to be part of. The choice that transformed everything then. We do this right," Sienna said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We take it one day at a time. We're honest with each other. We don't pretend this will be easy, because it won't be. Your world and mine are going to clash. People are going to judge. But if you're willing to try, so am I." Theo pulled her close, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. "I've never been more willing to try anything in my entire life." They stayed on that couch as the city lights began to twinkle below. Two people from different worlds who had collided in the most unexpected way. Theo told her about the pressures of running a company, about board members who questioned his every decision, about the loneliness of success. Sienna shared her dreams of one day opening her own event planning company, of creating moments of joy for people who needed them most. "I'll help you," Theo said suddenly. "Your company. I'll invest." "No," Sienna said firmly. "If I build something, I build it myself. I don't want your money, Theo. I want you. Just you." The look he gave her in that moment was worth more than any amount of wealth. It was gratitude and respect and something deeper. Something that felt like love, even though it was too soon to say the word. 3 months later, the coffee shop bustled with the usual morning crowd. But in the corner booth, Sienna and Theo sat with fingers intertwined, sipping drinks and sharing a muffin. He wore a baseball cap and jeans, disguise enough to avoid recognition. She wore her favorite sweater, the one with the small hole near the hem that she refused to throw away. "I have something to tell you," Theo said, his voice nervous in a way she rarely heard. Good nervous or bad nervous. Terrifying nervous. Took a breath. "I'm stepping back from the company. Not completely, but I'm promoting someone to handle day-to-day operations. I'm tired of living in boardrooms. I want to live in moments like this." Sienna's eyes widened. "Theo, you don't have to do that for me. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for us. For the life I want to build with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Wait," Sienna breathed. "Is that?" "It's not what you think," Theo said quickly, opening it to reveal a simple silver key. "It's the key to a house I bought. Not a penthouse, just a house with a yard and a kitchen where we can burn toast together. I want you to move in with me. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to build a life that's ours, not mine or yours, but ours." Tears streamed down Sienna's face as she took the key, feeling its weight in her palm. 3 months ago, she had slapped a stranger in a club. Now she was holding the key to a future she had never dared to imagine. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Theo pulled her into his arms, and in that small coffee shop, surrounded by strangers who had no idea they were witnessing something extraordinary. Two hearts that had collided by accident chose each other on purpose. 1 year later, Sienna stood in the backyard of their house, watching Theo chase Pepper around the garden. The cat had never warmed up to him completely, but she tolerated his presence, which Sienna considered a victory. Chloe sat beside her on the porch, a glass of wine in hand. You know, Chloe said, when you slapped that man. I thought you were going to get arrested. So did I, Sienna laughed. You got a love story? Sienna watched Theo finally catch Pepper, who immediately squirmed free and ran behind a tree. He looked up, caught her eye, and smiled. That same smile that had changed her life one chaotic night in a club. Not a love story, Sienna corrected softly. A life story. The real kind, with burnt toast and smoke alarms and a cat who hates him. The kind where we choose each other every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, Theo said, walking over and wrapping his arms around her from behind. Because you're worth every challenge, every compromise, every moment. As the sun set behind them, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Sienna leaned back into the arms of the man she had accidentally slapped and intentionally loved. Their story hadn't been perfect. There had been arguments about schedules, about the media attention, about learning to merge two different worlds. But through it all, they had held on to the truth that had brought them together. Love didn't require perfection. It required presence, honesty, and the courage to keep choosing each other. One day at a time, and in the end, that choice made all the difference. The end.